words to you about Calibre and how we do things at Loughborough, and really looking forward to answering any questions that you might have for me at the end of that. I'll do my best to answer them. As I'm sure everybody knows, Britain is famous for many things, including its excellent weather. All year round, we have excellent weather, bright blue skies, and at Loughborough University, that's particularly the case. We have exceptional weather all year round. The sky is this blue at all times of the year. The grass is this green. And this is the building that Claire and Adam and I work in. This is the Hazelrig building. In fact, at this very moment, I am just on the other side of this window here, if you can see my pointer on there. I don't think if I go to the window and wave, it quite works like that, but that's my office window. I thought I might just tell you who I was before I dive into the main point of my presentation. So I've been at Loughborough University for quite a long time now. I joined in 1990. I'm a mechanical engineer. My research is all around dynamics, particularly around vibration measurement, and especially in the area of laser technology. So while I am now the Pro Vice Chancellor, I'm still teaching a little bit and still continuing to do my research. And though I've done many different jobs, so I was the head of mechanical and manufacturing engineering for 6 years, from 2001 to 2007. Then I was the Dean of the Faculty of Engineering for 4 years. Then I was the Pro Vice Chancellor for Enterprise, which is our external engagement role, particularly with business. And then I've been Pro Vice Chancellor for Research since 2014. So I've done many roles, and so my mix of my activities has changed. But I still continue to teach and research alongside doing my job as Pro Vice Chancellor. When I came to Loughborough in 1990, I had this dark stuff on my head. I've forgotten what it is now. And here is me in a more recent picture. Not so much of that stuff on my head and not so dark. But I don't think that's anything to do with the rigours of life at Loughborough University. I think that's just natural passage of time. At least the picture on the right shows that they do still let me out to talk about vibration every now and then, which is always a treat. I thought also I might show you a picture of Loughborough University, just on the off chance that Claire might not have shown you a picture of Loughborough University at any point. But Gordana and I were just talking about our campuses just while we were waiting to come on. And I know you're very proud of your campus at Novi Sad. We're certainly very proud of our campus here in the Midlands region of England. Our campus is we're a middle-sized university, but we have a very large single site campus, most of which you can see on this slide, goes all the way around here. You may know that we are the UK's premier university for sport, and you get a very good impression of that very quickly by looking at this image here. So you can see, for example, an athletics track here, a swimming pool here. We have this strange game that we play in England called cricket, that's played in a few countries, but not very many. So they play cricket here and they play cricket here, soccer, rugby. So there's a very, very big sporting activity on our campus, not just for our students, but also for young people who are competing at the very highest level up to Olympic standard. We also have a very large proportion of our students who live on our campus. So about 60% of our students live on our campus, many of them in this part of campus here, the student village. And many of them are back with us now, following as we've all experienced the difficulties of the pandemic. So our Loughborough campus is quite distinct in that we have all of our academic activity on this site. We have a lot of sporting activity on this site. We have a lot of our students living on this site. And then over on the west side of our campus, just at the top of my slide here, we have something called the Science and Enterprise Parks. So we have a couple of thousand people who work for businesses that are not a part of the university, but are our partners on our campus. And we have this vision of creating a campus that unites the academic world and the business world side by side on a single campus. I hope one day some of you may have a chance to come and see this for real. In fact, these days, this is not our only campus. So we have a second campus now in London on the site of what was the Olympic Park in 2012. We at Loughborough, we operate as 9 schools, and one of our schools of the university is based in London on the Olympic Park here. It's a school that caters just for postgraduate students, both master students and PhD students, and it has its own faculty. We've been open since 2015, and it's been an absolutely terrific success. Has given us opportunity to engage with lots of partners in the capital and around the capital that it was difficult for us to engage with from our Midlands base. So it's really added an extra dimension to the university. And our vision is that the London campus and the Midlands campus work in harmony with each other, so they each bring a benefit to the other. And certainly that's been the experience that we've had. This is a very exciting part of London. It's the east side of London. There's a lot of regeneration happening on this side of London, and we're very proud to be a part of that. And a little bit like our Midlands campus, where we have a business community and an academic community side by side, we have the same thing here at London. So we occupy one end of this building here, just underneath the H on here east at the top of that building. So this end of the building is all ours. But this building here, for example, is one of Europe's biggest innovation centres with lots of new technology businesses in it. Further down the building that we occupy, there are organisations like Ford Motor Company's mobility team, so another high-tech group from within an important business partner of ours. And this is a real motivation for the university to work closely with the end users of our academic work, whether that's a private sector company, a public sector organisation, or a charitable organisation. And there will be many such organisations arriving on the Queen Elizabeth Olympic Park over the next few years. So it's a really exciting time for us there. Now, you asked me to come and talk mainly about something called the Calibre Framework, which we've been operating at Loughborough since 2016. And so let me try and do that now. So I'll show you this graphic here a few times because it sets out the different programs within the Calibre Framework. And I'll tell you how we got started. And then at the end, I'll reflect on some of the things that we're thinking about now, because we've been operating this framework for 5 years, and we're reflecting on what's worked well and what's not worked so well. And first, I should explain the acronym. So Calibre is an acronym, and the acronym expands in this way as Collective Ambition at Loughborough for Building Research Excellence. Now, our university strategy, which we formulated in 2014, is called Building Excellence. So that's where that bit of the acronym comes from, and I simply slipped in the word research into the middle of that to express the idea that this framework is all about the research, the implementation of the university strategy in research. These two words were really very important in the message that Calibre is trying to deliver. Let me start with this word here, ambition. So at Loughborough, we have been on a very significant journey to become a research-intensive university in the UK. And I joined the university in 1990, and that was the time when the Vice-Chancellor at the time, the President of the university, was beginning the transformation of Loughborough University from a university with a very, very good reputation for its talk programmes to a university that could keep that reputation for its talk programmes, but could also develop a reputation for its research activity. So as a research university, we are, by that measure, we're 30 years old. So we still think that we're proud of what we've achieved, that we're compared to other UK universities, we're nowhere near the end of our journey yet. And we progressed a very, very long way in that period. And so using the word ambition for this framework here was really a challenge to the university community to say, we've come a very, very long way, but we must still have the ambition to step up a little bit further. I said to you before that Loughborough is the UK's leading university for sport, and we often use sporting analogies when we talk about what we're doing at Loughborough. So the analogy that we were using was that we've come a long way. We find ourselves getting into the finals of major events. But if you get to the finals of major events, it's still another significant step to get yourself onto the podium, to win medals, and particularly to be in the middle of the podium and win the best medal. And we were saying to colleagues, we must have the ambition to be pleased about how far we've progressed since 1990, but we must still retain the ambition to take those next steps to be on the podium and to win medals. But we also recognised that we were a medium-sized university and that we are trying to rub shoulders. We're trying to compete with universities in the UK that have been active in research for a lot longer than we have, who are bigger than us, who are, let's face it, richer than us. And so we had to have a plan for how we could be competitive. And I felt that one of the ways in which we could do that was to be clear about the areas in which we would be active and to pool our resources to focus on a finite number of areas. And that was where the word collective came from. So the collective word and the ambition word are both really important. The origins of the framework I've summarised on this slide here, and I already started to mention the first bullet on this slide. So we had a new university strategy that we launched in April 2014. In December 2014, we had the results of the UK's National Research Assessment. So in the UK, we have this major national assessment of the research in every university, every discipline in every university. Happens every 6 or 7 years. So for example, we submitted to the latest assessment just at the end of March. So we've just completed the cycle for the next assessment. But when I was coming into this role as Pro Vice Chancellor for Research, we had just had the results from the 2014 assessment. I came into the role in March 2015. So I had in one hand, I had the new university strategy, and in the other hand, I had the results from our national research assessment. And in many ways, that was a perfect time for someone like me to start the job that I've been in since then. So we quite naturally, at that time, started to review, because we'd had the results of the national assessment, we started to review our activity and our performance with the research committee. Naturally, that's the university committee that I chair, that has associate deans in it from all of the schools, with the university senate, which is the most important academic board of the university, obviously, and with the university council, which is the body of our governors. So the first few months for me in my job was setting out an assessment of where we were doing well, where we were doing not so well, what our future opportunities might be, and so on. The research committee took on the job of implementing the university strategy and research in October 2015. And it was those discussions that resulted in a paper to research committee that I'd authored to establish something called the Calibre Framework. So the Calibre Framework had its first kind of public formal discussion in April 2016. But it was following on from several months of discussions of the university strategy that had been taking place, as I say here, in research committee, in Senate and in council. Research committee refined that Calibre proposal and agreed that in its next meeting in June of 2016, and then a few weeks later, Senate approved the strategy, the Calibre Framework, and that was then implemented from the following academic year. I just do a quick fast forward here on this slide because, as I said a moment ago, we've just submitted to our latest UK research assessment, and we'll get results from that in April 2022. And we are also in the process of drafting a new university strategy, which we will approve in November 2021. So actually we are reviewing all of our Calibre activity right now through Research Committee, and so quite timely for me to be able to give a presentation like this to you. So these are the things, so in this initial period between my appointment and those discussions at Research Committee, what I was doing then was trying to work out what it is that we needed to do differently, what it is that was strong that we needed to retain, what had changed in the external environment that we needed to respond to, all of the normal things that you do when you're trying to develop a new strategy and develop an implementation plan for it. And these are some of the areas that we felt were important priorities for us. The first point goes back to what I was saying about collective and how we can be competitive in a research environment in the UK, where lots of universities are bigger than us, richer than us, been active in research for longer than us. So focus had a big emphasis to it. We really did a piece of work looking at what our strengths were, and I've written on this slide honestly, because sometimes I think we have about 850 academics at Loughborough, and sometimes I think if you say to 850 academics like me, how many strengths do we have? They'll come back and tell you that we have about 1,700 individual strengths. And of course, that can't be a reality. So I wanted to provoke a discussion that was an honest discussion about really where our strengths in research lay, and particularly where our priorities lay. So sometimes we may be strong in areas that really have had their day. Sometimes we may want to be strong in new areas where we need to say these are priorities and we need to develop that area, but we can't say that we're currently strong. So all of the schools were challenged to really identify what their strengths were. We pushed hard on our output quality, our research output quality, our journal papers, our research monographs, and so on. And we pushed very hard on the idea of quality over quantity. I felt that when I became Pro-Vice Chancellor for Research, we had an academic body that was working exceptionally hard. And so it wasn't possible for me to come and say, here are some more things that I'm going to ask you to do. But I did feel that sometimes, and I think this was a consequence of the journey, the 30-year journey that we'd been on, or the 25-year journey that we'd been on by that time, where we've been building our research and building our research. And what we've been doing more and more activity, but we'd never really taken the time to stop and reflect and think about whether some of those activities actually, it was really time to stop and to place more emphasis on the quality of our work rather than simply doing more and more of it. We could see that when we looked in the data, and I'm very data driven in my approach, we could see that our citation performance was less good than some of our peers. And so we did a significant piece of work around trying to identify interventions, changes we could make to improve our citation performance. And we've certainly seen some benefits in that area. And we also saw the potential for open research, open access to our research outputs, but not actually limited to traditional outputs, but that's another story to expand on later maybe. But we put a lot of emphasis on open access to our research outputs at this time, and have continued to do that through the period. We see that as an important way to increase our research visibility. In our doctoral research programs, we saw that we had good postgraduate research populations, good populations of PhD students, but no real clear idea for how big a population was the right size. So we spent some time looking at disciplinary variations around the size of PhD student populations. And we could also see that one of the ways in which we were maintaining our PhD populations at that time was to fund a lot of it ourselves. And in fact, we decided that we were funding too much of it ourselves. And so we've placed a lot of emphasis. We still have a very significant internal investment in PhD students, but we have much more emphasis now on external funding for our PhD student populations. Research funding is, of course, a huge priority for all serious research institutions. We could see that this was another area where we were working very hard, but perhaps we were working too hard, and we needed to look at our strategy for attracting research funding. And we decided that we needed to pursue fewer awards, but that we needed some bigger awards amongst them, and that we needed a more managed, a more supported, and a more team-based approach to the pursuit of research funding. Research funding can easily become a very individual sport, and we wanted to make it much more of a team sport. In the UK, we have a big emphasis through our national assessment on research impact. And so we could see that this was an area that was good for us, because as I explained when I was showing you our campuses, working with business is a really important part of our philosophy. But we could see that delivering impact from our research doesn't just happen as a consequence of doing great research. We need to plan our impact projects in the same way that we meticulously plan the research projects that precede them. And so we gave a lot of thought to how we deliver our research impact. We also wanted to create a world-class research environment for everybody at Loughborough, our PGR, our PhD students, our research staff, our academic staff. And so we looked at a lot of the different aspects of our research environment in this stage of our planning. And then last but not least on this slide, we recognise the differences between schools. And so if I take an obvious example like funding, then we are obviously expecting greater research funding to be attracted to our engineering schools than we are to our schools in the social sciences and humanities. But it's still really important to be clear to all of the different parts of the academy what realistic expectations we have on them for funding and for all the other important aspects of our research activity. I describe this first slide here as building excellence within the schools. And this is important in the Calibre thinking. Calibre is a combination of activity that is led within the schools and activity that is led institutionally. These are not separate activities. It's the same academic staff and the same support staff that are driving forward activity, whether it's something that the main owner is the school or the main owner is an institutional program. It's the same support and academic staff that we're drawing on, and that's really important to recognize that. But these aspects here that I've been running through, I think of them as aspects that are really about building excellence within the schools. And this next slide is about building excellence across the schools. So when we looked at the areas of focus, we could see that there were certain areas where there were common interests across many schools. And indeed, areas where if we could put those parts together more effectively, then we can create a whole that is greater than the simple sum of those parts. And so we wanted, in thinking about building excellence across the schools, to take advantage of those mutual interests. It is, of course, a risk, whichever kind of structure you have in your institution. We have 9 schools at the moment. It's a risk that in having that organizational structure, you don't encourage activity across the disciplines. And one of the major jobs of the Calibre Framework is to counter that risk and to encourage activity that goes across the disciplines. So we wanted to identify what were these areas where we felt we had a significant activity across the schools, and where bringing that together would give us some extra advantage. We felt that we wanted to encourage a critical mass of activity in key areas that we would choose. At the same time, We also wanted to be able to answer a question that I'm often asked in my role, and I'm sure those of you in the audience in similar roles to me are the same. People say to you, what is your university good at in research? And you can't give an answer to that question that goes back to, well, we have 850 staff, so we have 1,700 distinct areas of research expertise. You have to give a much more concise answer to a question like that. And the institutional element of the Calibre framework is what gives us that answer, whether we're talking to funders or to people who might want to join the university or to the partners that we're going to work with. But it's also the case that in real life, the resource that we're able to deploy, whether it's our human resource or our financial resource or our physical resource, no matter how wealthy an institution you are, that resource is limited. It isn't infinite. There are always decisions to make about what you can support and regrettably what you can't support. And so the institutional programs were also a statement of a prioritization, and we give additional weight to activity that falls within the areas of the institutional programs. Of course, there were some things that we wanted to do once only, instead of 9 times. We have 9 schools at the moment. I think we had 11 when we started Calibre. We don't want to do the same job many times over. So Calibre was also a way of making sure that we acted efficiently from that point of view. Calibre aligned with our university strategy themes, and again, Calibre aimed to create a world-class institutional research environment. I often found myself saying this in presentations, that what we wanted to do with Calibre is make a shift from being good to great and not continue on the trajectory that I felt we were on, which was about more and more, because we were now at the point where workloads were such that that just wasn't an acceptable message to give to colleagues. Of course, we have to monitor all of these activities and support them. And I do think that at Loughborough we have an environment where the emphasis is that we work together to support each other. This is not an exercise where the Pro-Vice-Chancellor says, that's not good enough, go back and do more and do it better. That isn't the philosophy of our institution at all. We have a very community-oriented philosophy about the way that we do our work. And so while it's absolutely the case that we're monitoring, I said before, I'm very data-driven in the way I do my job, and we monitor a lot of data. The aim of those discussions is to be supportive. And the beginning of this support that we give to the schools are these documents that the schools have, which are called school research action plans. Now, the idea is very simple. I say to the schools, tell me what your ambitions are. And of course, I influence that discussion when we initiate that discussion. So I feel that they are being appropriately ambitious, so that if I add together all of the activities in each school, then it gives me a sum that equates to what we're trying to achieve as an institution overall. So I have to influence that. But in fact, it's not difficult. It was never a difficult discussion that I ever had to have. Schools set themselves ambitions naturally, and I simply asked them to write it down. Some of it quantitative, some of it qualitative, and those then became the plans against which we would judge performance and support them to achieve their ambitions. We created 2 little groups, which are formally in the university structure. They are subcommittees of the research committee. One of them was focused on research quality. So here we look at funding, at publications, at our PhD student populations, at our citations, all of those aspects of research. And a second separate committee, which was focused on impact. Both of these aspects were part of the school research action plans, and we would monitor performance and support the schools through these subcommittees. These subcommittees help us to support at the level of whole schools, but we also, very importantly, have a performance and development review process for individual staff. And it's really important that the discussions, the data, down to that level of detail in our performance and development review discussions are consistent with the overall ambitions of the school. And that's very important. So as a kind of summary for a moment and a little bit of a pause for where we've got to before I look at some of the finer detail. This is, in simplest terms, what we're trying to achieve. So the Calibre Framework starts by acknowledging the school's many and diverse strengths. Really important that the things that you plan at an institutional level are absolutely rooted in the priorities for individual schools, and that there's a complete alignment between what you're trying to do institutionally and what you're trying to do in individual schools. And that's why in the graphic here I have this this is meant to be the heart of the framework, acknowledging that it's all based on the strengths in every school, and if you don't have those strengths in every school, then you don't have a foundation on which to support the institutional programs that I'm going to go on and talk about. And then, so building on that foundation, we have these 8 interconnected programs, which I talk about in terms of building excellence across the schools. You can see on this graphic, I hope you can see it clearly enough, around the outside of the graphic are 4 themes: educating for success here, investing in staff here, raising standards and aspirations here, and growing capacity and influence. These were the 4 themes of the overall university strategy. So the 8 programs at the institutional level for Calibre were mapped directly to the overall university strategy. I'm going to look at these programs now, the 8 programs, in just a little bit of detail, not too much, so that you can see what it is that we're trying to do. And I put them into 3 groups. So the first group, and quite intentionally at the top of the graphic here, are the programs that are about our people development. There are 2 programs here. One is the Doctoral College, which is obviously about our PhD students, and the other is the Research Leaders program, which is about staff at all levels, from the most junior research staff through to the professors of the university. The Doctoral College actually was something that we created about a year after the formation of Calibre. So it was in the proposal. At the time, we had a graduate school. We wanted to give much clearer focus on the PhD student population at the university, and we wanted to refresh the remit of what was then the graduate school, and that came in the form of the Doctoral College. The Doctoral College has responsibility for governance as far as PhD students are concerned, but also, for example, responsibility around student experience, and also around the financing of our student population. Our Research Leaders program, and really the key word here is leaders, was very much about increasing our leadership capacity amongst our academic body, and we've done this at many levels. So we've introduced early career fellowships that we have funded ourselves. For example, we have some fellowships called Doctoral Prize fellowships, which recruit outstanding very early career staff who are less than 2 years since completing their PhD. So they're right at the very beginning of their career. But we've also placed a very significant emphasis on the pursuit of externally funded fellowships, particularly from our research councils in the UK, and we've done that with some very significant success. We've had about 40 externally funded fellowship awards in the time that we've been running this, from a base that when we started, I think we had maybe 3 or 4 active fellowships at the time that we started. So we have about 20 active fellowships now. We've had 40 over the period, but about 20 active fellowships now. So very significant expansion in our, with this emphasis on leadership. On the left-hand side of the graphic here, we have 3 programs that are all about increasing our capacity, but also increasing our influence. And a very important emphasis here was on increasing our influence, the influence of our research. In the middle of the 3 programs here is something called the global challenges. So we wanted to identify those big societal challenges of the day where we felt we had all of the necessary expertise to make a distinctive contribution. We identified just 4 areas that we would be active in. One was energy, one was health and well-being, one was changing environments, and one was secure and resilient societies. So we had those 4 programs in our global challenges program within Calibre, and we brought colleagues together to do work across disciplines. So this is the interdisciplinary aspect. We brought colleagues together to pursue activity in that area. At the same time, under this program here, the Here to Stay program, we introduced an Institute of Advanced Studies. Many universities have such an entity, and the Institute of Advanced Studies has been extraordinarily successful in bringing international research collaborators to Loughborough. We observed that we had a lot of collaborators around the world when we talked to our individual academic staff, but we wanted them to come and spend time at our house, on our campus with us more regularly than was previously the case. And through the Institute of Advanced Studies, over the period since 2017, we've now had over 200 fellows come and participate in our Loughborough programs from about 35 different countries. So it's been a very successful program. And we also wanted to be more active in this thought leadership program on placing Loughborough at the heart of debates of the day. So we've run a number of initiatives around the environment, around new transport technologies, where we've got some specific program of activity that we planned that tries to not only inform the public, but also position us as thought leaders in a particular space. And then on the right side of the graphic, we have the last of the 3 programs that I will talk about. The main program here is something called the Beacon program. The Beacons are our long-standing, internationally recognized research strengths. And we wanted to make sure that they were very prominent in the message that the university was giving to the outside world. We had 5 of these areas. I said before that Loughborough is the UK's leading university for sport. So sport and exercise was one of those areas. We also have significant strengths in engineering. So we had 1 beacon in transport technologies, 1 beacon in high value manufacture, and another beacon in the built environment. And then last but not least, in the social sciences, we have real strength in communication. So our 5th beacon is in communication and culture. And so that was a very strong, powerful, succinct statement of where our world-class research strengths lay. But I didn't want to run the risk that we would give so much emphasis to these important areas that we would stop encouraging colleagues to have new ideas and to inspire new areas. So I wanted to acknowledge the strengths, but I wanted also for us to have a churn in our activity. So we had a second program called Ambition, which was a program where we were trying to identify what our next set of big new research activities might be, and a third program called Adventure, which was a way of us trying something completely new. And the way that we supported the Adventure program was to make awards with internal funding for groups of 5 or 6 PhD students. We called them mini centres for doctoral training, and that's how we initiated a variety of different new activities in Adventure. Now, a lot of really important people that made all of these things possible. So in our research and enterprise office, we have research development managers and partnership development managers, and indeed we have more of them now than we did before Calibre. So we've invested in those areas. Claire is one of these excellent research development managers that we have, who've done such a terrific job for us, and obviously the partnership development managers are looking more at our relationships with our end users, with the non-academic world. The associate deans in the schools are really important people. So I, as the Pro-Vice Chancellor for Research, I couldn't do my job without the associate deans for research that I have in each school. They are the link. So we have the Pro-Vice Chancellors, the deans and the associate deans in a really important triangle. So I communicate regularly with the associate deans and with the deans. The deans and the associate deans, they communicate regularly with each other, and that triangle of communication is really critically important. At Loughborough, we have associate deans for enterprise, and they have a particular interest in the impact space, and so they are also very important people, and they tend to work a little bit more closely with the partnership development managers, and the associate deans for research tend to work more closely with the research development managers. But these are all very important people and very important relationships. And then the Calibre programs also have their leads. So each of the beacons has a senior academic lead. Each of the global challenges has a senior academic lead. So does the Institute of Advanced Studies, and so does the Doctoral College. In the case of the Doctoral College, the lead there has associate Pro-Vice Chancellor status, so a slightly more prominent status than others. So that tells you what it is that we've been doing, and some of the things that we've been doing. And now we are looking at how things have changed since we introduced Calibre in 2016. And broadly speaking, I would say that I'm really pleased with the changes that we made. Those areas that we wanted to look at around quality, not quantity, in our outputs, about right sizing our PhD student populations and getting the funding under control, about winning bigger awards and trying to manage that more effectively. I would say all of those things have worked very successfully. Of course, there are some of the programs that have worked not quite in the way that we thought that they might. So in the case, for example, of the Institute of Advanced Studies, I don't think any of us could have predicted quite how successful that program was going to be. We were very excited about its launch, but it's really been in terms of building collaborations with outstanding people across the world. I don't think we could have dreamed that it would be as effective as it had been. But from other perspectives, some people think that the 8 programs of Calibre have been as a kind of a collection, have been a little bit too complicated. And so one of the things that we're trying to do for this next phase that we're moving into now is to try and simplify the structure of whatever the framework will be called, try and simplify the structure. And we also observe that we have to get a much closer integration between the work that is being led from schools and the work that is led from the beacons and the global challenges. We said we said from the outset that it was really important to make sure that those that the activity led from the schools and the activity led institutionally worked in harmony together, because at the end of the day, it's the same academic and support staff that are making that activity happen. But we didn't quite succeed, I don't think. So we have to do a little bit more work to bring those 2 activities a little bit closer together, and we're working on that. But in terms of engagement, I think that there are very few people whose activity is not influenced by the thinking that's gone into the Calibre framework. Very few people who've not, amongst the academic body, who've not engaged in beacons, in global challenges, in Institute of Advanced Studies, and so on. So I think the engagement has been very significant, very comprehensive. Of course, one of the things that I should say about engagement is when you pick particular areas, when you have 850 academic staff and you pick 9 areas that you say are going to be very prominent, then you do run the risk that some people will say, well, that none of this is for me. And we've certainly had that. And when people say that, you have to reflect on whether you think that that it's true, and whether you think that it's a problem that needs to be resolved. I've certainly never shied away from being honest and saying, yes, I am saying I want you to devote some of your time, some of your precious research time, to working on these 9 areas that we've picked out. I'm not saying to anybody you should stop doing something. I'm not saying to anybody that an area of their research is less important because it doesn't directly connect to beacons or global challenges. But I have been very clear in saying to people, find ways, find the contribution that you can make with your distinctive research expertise, find contributions that you can make into the 9 areas that we declared. I've never, I've never been shy to say that. And then last but not least, you have to celebrate. There's such a lot of hard work goes on in academic research, whether you're the researcher yourself or whether you're supporting it. And so when things go well, then it's really important that we all enjoy that. In Calibre, we have Calibre Awards, and we've tended to theme these. So in the last year, we've had themes around international collaboration, around open research, and around equality and diversity. And we find our winners by the shamelessly unscientific method of the public vote. So we don't try to pick a real winner out of the many diverse applications we get for these rounds. It's a cliche, but we describe everybody who is shortlisted as a winner, as they all say. We wanted to acknowledge the excellent work that we did, but as much as anything, I wanted to inspire a dialogue across all our disciplines about all the different research that was going on across the university. And doing the public vote, I don't know what your favourite public vote activity is in Serbia. Think of the Eurovision Song Contest or something like that. The public vote was a great way of getting lots of people to talk about the research that was going on in different parts of the university, and I like the way that it's worked out. Of course, some people have more friends than others, and that enables them to win the public vote. But I don't care about that. We're celebrating all the different projects that are considered, and the public vote just helps to spread the word. So I stop there.